Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. I have a layout process video for you today featuring two challenges. So the first challenge is a mixed media frenzy group hop, and here is the inspiration piece we are using for that hop. And the second challenge is a stamped title challenge. And since this inspiration piece has stamping in the background, I thought this was a perfect project to combine with that stamped title challenge. So let's get started. So the inspiration piece is titled Remember, so that is something that I want to head in that direction. So I grabbed these photos of our cat who passed away in the summer, and I grabbed my stack of stamps, and I'm looking for various words that say remember and trying to decide how to build my title around this remember word. And I do find several pieces that work. Now this one had another word, I think it was like remember when or something like that. So I cut my stamp apart, and that's totally okay because if I want it back together, I can just mount it on my stamp block back together again, and that's no big deal. Now this one I was going to cut, but then the words were actually touching, and so I was worried about messing up the words, and I did off camera very carefully cut it apart along the seams of the words because they didn't overlap, they just touched. Now, I will show you a tip a little bit later that if you can't cut your stamps apart or don't want to, another tip that you can use. So here I am practicing which remember word I want. I know I want that U to be in a nice big scripty font, and I'm going to use it in a lighter color to send it into the background just a little bit, and hopefully I'll talk about that some more when we get to this full title. So my full title is there. It says, I will remember you always, always, always. And here I am testing out different colors for the various bits and pieces, and I decided to go with a navy blue. Now my stamp hadn't been used in a long time and it was dirty and it wasn't stamping very well. So I cleaned it up, and then when I stamped, I rested it there for just a moment to help transfer more of the ink, and then it was working fine. So those are some tips if you're having issues with your clear stamps. I pulled out this piece of paper that has a very faint grid line on it, and that's going to help me get all my stamping nice and straight. And so that's another tip if you're trying to stamp. Oh, and here I'd accidentally set my stamp block right down on my tag that I created and smudged everything. So I cut a new tag. Luckily I had enough paper. And then on the tag that I had smudged, I'm going to do some testing so that when I get to my actual tag, the things are how I want them to be. So here is a little bit of why I wanted that U in a lighter color, because this title can read, I will remember, but it can also read, I will remember you. So it does this play on words as you're reading it in your mind. So here's the other stamp tip that I just did on screen, where I covered up portions of my stamp with some Scotch tape, and then I inked up my stamp. And because these words were actually touching, I did have to kind of clean off a bit of the stamp where the ink had gotten onto a part I didn't want to stamp. So I'm repeating that process for my final actual stamping because I did practice on that other tag. And then here is what it looks like when I'm done. I did end up using my little cloth there to clean off the excess ink on my stamp instead of using my finger like I did last time. So that worked nicely, and my tag is ready to go. So I'm going to move on to the body of my layout. Now the inspiration piece had 3 vertical drip rows going on, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now the inspiration had 1 photo, and I am classic for cramming in as much stuff as I can on a page. And so here you see 2 photos, but I actually have 3 photos, which is that little upside down piece back there. And I'm leaving that one out of the filming because it is kind of private. So I just, for my own privacy, I needed to not show that one. And so I am going to leave that one upside down through this whole process, but you can see how I am going to get these drips going on with re-inker bottles from my stamp pads. Now I didn't have the exact re-inkers from my stamp pads, but I just picked things close from what I did have. And I've got a gold spray bottle from, I think it's an older Prima product. And here is where I decided these drips were too far apart. They had this gap to them that was uncomfortable, and they were too intense by being direct ink. So I'm solving that problem by dabbing up some of the ink with this tissue, and in the process it started smearing, and I knew I wanted those bands closer together anyway, so I decided to go ahead and purposely smear them. And then I did dry everything off screen. Now that greenish blue color there is from Concord and Ninth, and their ink has an agent in it that helps smooth out the ink, and that did not dry very well with my heat tool, so I did have to sop up the extra color. So know your inks and know how they behave. Practice them on extra sheets of paper, whatever you need to do so that you know how your ink is going to behave. Here I'm using that bottle and a paintbrush to add a little bit more detail to my title tag there, and I'm going to keep adding spatters to this as we go with the various colors. So I let that part dry, and then, oh, here I am with more of the spatter. So I put a drip of those reinkers on my stamp block, sprayed it with a little puddle of water, mixed it up, and then flicked with my paintbrush off the edge of the stamp block to get spatters there. And then sometimes adding more purposeful, larger drops, and also just using my paintbrush to get bigger blobs. And I'm adding more of that detail around the image than in the original inspiration piece, because no matter what I do, I seem to have a hard time leaving white space. I just keep filling and filling. Anyway, moving on, the inspiration piece had a ring of like autumn leaves, and so I'm going to use this ring of flowers. I have 3 crocheted flowers that I'm using, as well as some paper flowers that I'm using. The inspiration piece had stamped butterflies flowing across the page. I am stamping cats, and I think this is an older Hero Art stamp that's actually a Halloween stamp set, but I bought it because it had lots of cats. And then this other stamp set is from Paper Wishes, and it's actually a silicone and not a photopolymer stamp set, and I'm actually liking it. I didn't think I would, and I like them because I can get multi-generation stamping out of them easier than I can with the photopolymer, and that kind of surprised me. So I'm going to give these silicone stamps more thought in the future. So I also stamped some background images of flowers and kind of sprigs in the gold to be a backdrop to those white paper flowers. And that will finish off my layout. I will go ahead and give you some close-up photos here of the various components. So here we see the full layout. And then here is what my tag title looked like when I was done stamping it. Here is some of those cats along with some of those flowers. And then here is a little bit more of the collection of mixed media images and techniques that I had going on. Do remember that this is a Mixed Media Frenzy YouTube hop, and I will have links for you in the show description for all of the crafters playing along this month. It's a free group, and if you want to join us, I will leave you the link to the Facebook group as well. Thanks for watching, and if you got something useful out of this video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.